Hi there, I'm Christine Campbell. I'm an author and a reader, and today I thought it'd be nice to talk about reading and how reading can affect your writing. So, if you're a reader, you might find this interesting, and if you're a writer, I hope you will find it interesting because I found that being a reader makes a huge difference to this quality of myself as a writer. So, first of all, I was on holiday earlier in the year in September, and while we were in a cottage up in at Loch Ness, they have a library of books in the living room, and it's wonderful. You can browse it, and while I was there, I read a few books that I really enjoyed by an author I hadn't read before. And what I found was that the way she handled certain subjects, difficult subjects, really gave me a handle on how I could maybe handle the difficult subjects I was dealing with in my writing. So her name is Diane Chamberlain, and she writes a similar genre, I think, to what I write, which is women's contemporary fiction. I think you could probably say that's what Diane Chamberlain writes as well. I've not actually checked on Amazon what she says she writes, but I would think it comes under that genre. And this one's called The Midwife's Confession. I read a few. I read Breaking the Silence and Her Mother's Shadow. Now, I have to say that, well, I've only started Her Mother's Shadow, haven't actually finished reading that yet. But I have to say that I really did enjoy them, so much so that I looked out for more when I came home, and that's what I have with me now. And I read another one up there, and I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, what she does is she takes some difficult subjects and she finds her way around writing them without being sensational, without being um, graphically violent, without being graphically sexy. She just writes with a passion, and she's very articulate, which obviously, as a writer, you would hope to be articulate. And that's what I was thinking of for those of you who are readers and who might perhaps think, well, I'd like to write a book. It's so important to read because Diane Chamberlain uses good language. Her sentence structure is terrific, and she doesn't over egg things. She doesn't write in flowery language, but her language is nice, it's pleasing. And just the way she forms the story is very pleasing too. So I think for any aspiring writer, the importance of reading just can't be emphasized enough, because through reading, and particularly if you take the time not to speed read but to read carefully, then it allows you to take note of the words that are used, to take note of how they're used, how this writer has structured her sentences, how she uses paragraphs to tell about one part, then she moves on to a new paragraph for the next part. It's important because when readers are buying your book, what they do is they open somewhere, whether it be the first page, the middle, wherever. And you know, one of the things that readers look for is what's called white space. I'm wondering if you can see. Not doing very well. Do you see the white space at the end of sentences and paragraphs. Nowadays, because readers are fed so much on the internet and YouTube, and you can watch films and you can listen to books through Audible and things like that, readers nowadays don't have the same attention span as we used to have, or as they used to have, say, a century ago, even a few decades ago. So therefore, they're not looking for blocks of writing, huge pages like Jane Austen. You could see no white space other than the margins in some of her pages because she went on writing, and that was acceptable then. And to be honest, her stories are wonderful, and she was a terrific writer, but it was to a different fashion. And I wonder if she would get taken up by a publisher today, because I think they would want her to, break up her sentences, break up her paragraphs, just give us a bit more white space on the page so that it's not so daunting. Because nowadays, when young readers, pick up Jane Austen, they might look at the page and think, oh wow, am I going to be able to read this? Now, once they get going, of course they'll read it and they'll enjoy it, but it's daunting when you see a block of writing. And so one of the things that you notice as a reader is the layout of the story. Now, that's important to you as a writer, because it teaches you that for each new thought, you need a new paragraph, or perhaps even a new sentence. And it doesn't matter how long or short the paragraphs are. If they're mixed, that's okay. We're not counting, oh, it should be 2 lines, 3 lines, 5 lines, 10 lines. Not counting like that, but noticing as you read that, in fact, yes, modern writers break up their writing into more paragraphs than used to be the fashion. And each paragraph should be really a thought. You would certainly change paragraph for points of view if for somebody else speaking. If you're writing dialogue, each person's speech needs a paragraph, and their actions that go along with that speech come into their paragraph. But even in narrative, it should be broken up a little bit. And that's something you would notice when you read. So the importance of reading's such an important thing in our lives. To be able to read and take in information is so important. Yes, you can hear a lot of information, but sometimes we need to read it, because even if we're listening and reading, we're taking it in through other senses, and taking information in through your eyes and having to understand it and work out what the words say and analyse it in your brain is a great way of taking in information. If you're only listening to information, it's very easy to be distracted. So, hence the importance of reading. So, in order to take in information, it's good to be able to read well. So, the importance of reading, even in this modern world, is it just can't be stressed enough. Okay, so that's as a reader and as an aspiring writer. What about if you are a writer? What about when you're wondering what to write, when you don't know if you've got a story in you? Well, I came across a number of years ago a book that I find interesting, and perhaps you will as well. I've spoken of it before, I do believe, but it's called A Writer's Book of Days by Judy Reeves. And it's a terrific book for people who need maybe a little bit of inspiration. She recommends writing every day, as in fact I do as well. I recommend writing every day. For me, it's revolutionised my writing. Where it used to take me months and if not years to write a novel, I'm now writing them in months, weeks and months, rather than months and years. Each draft used to take me months and months, and each book used to take me years and years. Now, each draft takes me weeks, and the book takes me months rather than years. Perhaps 6, 8 months, but months rather than years. And for me, that's been really encouraging, and I've loved it. So, writing every day is what got me to that point, because what I used to find when I didn't write every day, I would write and I would be quite happy with it, and then wouldn't look at it again for don't know how long, come back to it, and I would have to read it, the whole thing again. I would have to read from the very start again to get the run of the story, the gist of it, to get the feel of it before I could write fresh. But that doesn't happen when you're writing every day. It's in there, it's in your mind, it's playing in your mind. And so you just pick up and write the next bit. Sometimes you can maybe look over the day before, but you don't have to look over everything. You can just look over enough to get you back into the run. And I've found that invaluable, because the time that I used to spend rereading and rewriting and editing old work before I could start fresh work meant that I didn't have much time for the fresh work. So now, each day, with writing each day, I'm finding that I can write more in the time I have each day. Can't recommend it enough. And that's what Judy Reeves recommends in this book, A Writer's Book of Days. And in order to facilitate that, she's actually she's done it, broken it into the days of a year. And each day has writing prompts, hints, discussions about writing, examples of writing, everything you could need to inform your writing for that day. And if you're stuck, if you're not writing a novel and you're wanting to write a fresh story, or you're wanting to write articles or short stories, then each day has these writing prompts that you can use to write a piece. And sometimes I've used them to write a piece for my novel, because when the writing prompt has fitted the subject matter that I'm writing about, I've seen a possibility for a little scene for my characters inspired by that writing prompt. So there you have it, A Writer's Book of Days. I can recommend it. It's fun, it's informative, and it's a real beneficial aid to your writing. So that's my recommendation as a writer, to keep you going. And as an author, I have a recommendation for the readers, and also aspiring writers, I suppose, that my latest book, Christine Campbell, For What It's Worth, is available now as paperback, as you see, and also as an ebook. And this book is, it's not part of it. I wrote a series, some of you might know that, the Reluctant Detective series, and it was a series of 3 books. The main character, Mirabelle, was a lovely, I fell in love with her character myself. She just was such an interesting lady, so full of life and a little bit eccentric, which I love. And anyway, it's not about Mirabelle, but I couldn't leave her alone. I couldn't just walk away from her. So she's in this book. And the actual story is about her sister. Her sister Yvonne, I'll put it to this side, see if that's any. I'm not managing the angles well, am I? For What It's Worth, it's called. And For What It's Worth is about Mirabelle's sister Yvonne and her husband Hugh. And they're at that sort of age, they're into their 30s, and Yvonne's thinking, I want my family to start. And they've had their ups and downs. The backstory is there of how they've reached this point, and Yvonne desperately now wants a family. She's one of these women who craves it. And you may have been in that position yourself. You may know somebody who's been in that position, where every month when you have your time of the month, it's just devastating because you're not pregnant. Well, she's reached that stage. But the trouble is, Hugh, he would love to have a family too, but he's out of work. And Yvonne knows that having a baby is not going to come cheap. The babies come just themselves, but they bring such a lot of needs with them, and there are such a lot of things you have to care for a baby. So she is a bit worked up about it. And the book is about how they cope with that struggle, what they do about it. Yvonne decides to find a job for Hugh, and it's not necessarily a suitable one. I'll let you find out whether you think it is. And it's just how things develop in this relationship that's beginning to be torn a little bit by her need for a family and Hugh's inability to provide for a family. It actually reaches the point, as it says in the blurb, where she has to make a choice. And it's saying when things start to go wrong, she finds herself facing a choice no woman should ever have to face: her marriage or a baby. Now, no, how can you face such a choice, your marriage or a baby? Well, I'll leave it for you to find out in the book. I hope you enjoy it if you do decide to download it or buy the paperback copy. And I'd love to get your comments. I love to hear what readers think of my work. It's great if you post a review on Amazon. That's gold dust, because it makes a difference to who sees new books on Amazon. If you have reviews, it lets your book go up the rankings a little bit, and Amazon's algorithms then will recommend your book to other readers. So there you go. For readers, that's another book you might like to try. There's also Diane Chamberlain, another author you might like to try. There's a recommendation for writers that if you're struggling for inspiration or just to be regular in your writing habits, A Writer's Book of Days by Judy Reeves. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for bearing with me, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye just now. Hope you have a nice day.